Hello and welcome back to Better Know a Poet. Today, H is for Howard, Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. Now, he, along with Thomas Wyatt, are the two men that popularized the English sonnet form. They're the ones that brought the form from Italy and translated them into English. So, Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, was born 1517 in Hunston, Hertfordshire, in England. He died January 13th, 1547, in London. He was a poet who, with Sir Thomas Wyatt, introduced into England the styles and meters of the Italian humanist poets, and so laid the foundation of a great age of English poetry. The eldest son of Lord Thomas Howard, Henry took the courtesy title of Earl of Surrey in 1524 when his father succeeded as third Duke of Norfolk. It was Surrey's fate, because of his birth and connections, to be involved, though usually peripherally, in the jockeying for place that accompanied Henry VIII's policies. From 1530 until 1532, he lived at Windsor with his father's ward, Henry Fitzroy, Duke of Richmond, who was the son of Henry VIII and his mistress Elizabeth Blunt. In 1532, after talk of marriage with the Princess Mary, daughter of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, he married Lady Frances de Vere, the 14-year-old daughter of the Earl of Oxford, but they did not live together until 1535. Despite this marriage, an alliance between him and the Princess Mary was still discussed. In 1533, Richmond married Surrey's sister, Mary, but the two did not live together because Mary preferred to stay in the country. Richmond died 3 years later under suspicious circumstances. Surrey was confined at Windsor from 1537 to 1539, after being charged by the Seymours, high in favor since the king's marriage to Jane Seymour in 1536, with having secretly favored the Roman Catholics in the rebellion of 1536. He had, in fact, joined his father against the insurgents. In 1540, he was a champion in court jousts, and his prospects were further improved by the marriage of his cousin Catherine Howard to the king. He served in the campaign in Scotland in 1542 and in France and Flanders from 1543 to 1546. He acted as field marshal in 1545, but was reprimanded for exposing himself unnecessarily to danger. Returning to England in 1546, he found the king dying and his old enemies, the Seymours, incensed by his interference in the projected alliance between his sister Mary and Sir Thomas Seymour, Jane's brother. He made matters worse by his assertion that the Howards were the obvious regents for Prince Edward, Henry VIII's son, by Jane Seymour. The Seymours, alarmed, accused Surrey and his father of treason and called his sister, the Duchess of Richmond, to witness against him. She made the disastrous admission that he was still a close adherent to the Roman Catholic faith. Because Surrey's father, the Duke of Norfolk, had been considered heir apparent if Henry VIII had had no issue, the Seymours urged that the Howards were planning to set Prince Edward aside and assume the throne. Surrey defended himself unavailingly, and at the age of 30 was executed on Tower Hill. His father was saved only because the king died before he could be executed. Most of Surrey's poetry was probably written during his confinement at Windsor. It was nearly all first published in 1557, 10 years after his death. He acknowledged Wyatt as a master and followed him in adapting Italian forms to English verse. He translated a number of Petrarch's sonnets already translated by Wyatt. Surrey achieved a greater smoothness and firmness, qualities that were to be important in the evolution of the English sonnet. Surrey was the first to develop the sonnet form used by William Shakespeare. And so what happened is Wyatt translated the poems from Petrarch originally. He was the first to do it. But he basically translated them just word for word, just from the Italian to the English, word for word, with no, really giving a form to them or no understanding of the sonnet form as a whole. Surrey, Henry Howard, took Wyatt's translations and made them more applicable to English meter and style. And those are the ones that have survived. In his other short poems, he wrote not only on the usual early Tudor themes of love and death, but also of life in London, of friendship, and of youth. The love poems have little force except when, in two complaints of the absence of her lover being upon the sea, he wrote, unusual for his period, from the woman's point of view. The short poems were printed by Richard Tottle in his Songs and Sonnets, written by the Right Honourable Lord Henry Howard, late Earl of Surrey, and other, usually known as Tottle's Miscellany. The other included Wyatt, and critics from George Putnam onward have coupled their names. Surrey's translations of books 2 and 4 of the Aeneid, published in 1557 as Certain Books of Virgil's Aeneas, was the first use in English of blank verse, a style adopted from Italian verse. All right, so now we are going to read two sonnets from the Italian translated by Henry Howard. And they're just numbered sonnets. So this is Sonnet 37 and Sonnet 38. So here's Sonnet 37. The suit season that bud and bloom forth brings, with green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. The nightingale with feathers new she sings, the turtle to her make hath told her tale. Summer is come, for every spray now springs. The hart hath hung his old head on the pail. The buck in brake his winter coat he flings. The fishes float with new repaired scale. The adder all her slough away she slings. The swift swallow pursueth the flies small. The busy bee her honey now she mings. Winter is worn, that was the flower's bale. And thus I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. All right, now this is Sonnet 38. Alas, so all things now do hold their peace. Heaven and earth disturbed in nothing. The beasts, the air, the birds their song do cease. The night's chair the stars about doth bring. Calm is the sea, the waves work less and less. So am not I, whom love alas doth wring, bringing before my face the great increase of my desires, whereat I weep and sing. In joy and woe as in a doubtful ease. For my sweet thoughts sometime do pleasure bring, but by and by the cause of my disease gives me a pang that inwardly doth sting, when that I think what grief it is again, to live and lack the thing should rid my pain. So that's Henry Howard. That's our H for today. Join me tomorrow when we'll be going over our J. See you then.